Well, good morning. We'll make a start. If you could just put your hand up and make sure that I can hear you, Alan and Mohammed, and we'll hopefully have some others join us. I've actually got 12 registered this morning, so I'm hoping that we'll get one or two more people on board. Great, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mohammed. Just really simple rules. Make sure you've got a cup of tea or a glass of water. I've got the remnants of a cup of coffee. Morning. A means of taking notes, I'll supply the handouts a bit later on. Switch off your phone, which mine is. And what we're going to talk about, well, I'm going to put some context around the workshop, what I'm talking about, why it's important and what you can hope to get out of it. If you, I don't think either of you have been at my earlier workshops, but you'll recognise a lot of, you'll recognise some of this, but then you'll see some different content around strategy design. And then just as we close off, just very briefly, a mentoring program that I run, I'll talk about that and the rest of the LinkedIn workshop series, which while we have two this morning, actually has been very popular over the last couple of weeks. So if we don't get, ask questions as we go along if you want to. I'll open your microphones perhaps at some point. And the webinar is going to be recorded and there'll be a copy sent through to you sometime over the next couple of days. And I'll send along a copy of the slides as well. So transforming leaders strategy design. Why look at this? Well, I've been in this game a long time now, and a lot of academic texts have portrayed strategic planning almost as a purely logical process. You identify a problem, you look at the company strategy, you formulate the strategy, you implement the strategy, and then you monitor your implementation of the strategy. Now, yes, there's a certain amount of truth in this, and I've been there and done that, and so have other people. But the practice of strategic leadership and some recent influential thinking in the strategy space shows us that good strategy isn't just about data analysis. Great strategy's got to be creative too. And above all else, transformational strategy has to be designed, and hence my quote from one of my favourite thinkers, Tim Brown. You know, we spend a lot of time designing things. In this case, he's talking about a bridge, but not enough time thinking about the people who are crossing it. And it's the people who are crossing the bridge that really matter. Why talk about this now? Well, we're in the middle of the biggest disruption of everything in everyone's lifetime, just about, I think. We're in the middle of a pandemic that's a 1 in 100 year event. There are so many different ways of saying what it is. It's a tipping point, an inflection, it's a singularity, and indeed Gary Bowles of the Singularity University has called it the Big Reset. So a fortunate few have managed it all as BAU or growth, or grown their business, but many have sunk or are sinking. We can see that on the news every day, and certainly most of us having to rethink the strategies that we've got. So what I really wanted to do today was to look at bringing a little bit of fresh thinking and some old thinking and integrating the two to bear on strategy design. Why do that? Well, whether we're conscious of it or not, all of us are under some form of stress, pressure or challenge, more so than usual. And one of the most important ways to deal with that is to reframe your thinking, to educate yourself. And I'm delighted that you've joined me this morning to do some of that. Now, reframing is easy. Yeah, no. Reframing is not easy. Many of us are looking for a route to innovation through strategy. And the most overused word in the English language, pivot, is nevertheless applies, and shifting is not far behind it at the moment. And what we're looking to either do is to move our customer segments or change other things within our businesses. And we pivot away from normal incremental innovation, which is we change as we go along. And we move to, if we do something with customer segments, it's called architectural innovation. That's pivoting to a different customer segment. If we change the things we do, we're disrupting what we're doing. So if we're changing other things other than segments, it's disruptive, that's a pivot. If we change everything, if we really move our model, which is what I'm in the middle of just at the moment, then it's a much more radical innovation, and it's some form of strategic shift. And I always use, I love metaphors, as you'll see right the way through this. You know, pivoting's a tough gig, shifting even more so, but the old saying goes that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. If you want to start your own forest, it's a good idea to design it in the first place, which I think is the way to go. Who influences me? Who influences me is a whole series of people, particularly Linda Grattan. For a number of years now, London Business School has talked about the way society is changing, and COVID is just accelerating that. Kim and Morborn from INSEAD talk about blue ocean strategy. A lot of people know about that too. That, again, is highly influential on me. Tim Brown of IDEO, the founder and chairman of IDEO, talks about change by design. Kaplan and Norton, you can't go past them when you talk about how you actually monitor what's going on. And then how design thinking is incorporated into classical strategies in two books for me, Business Model Generation and Business Model U, both written primarily by Alex Osterwalder and Yves Pigneur, with Tim Clark coming into the one on Business Model U. And then one of Australia's original thinkers is Matt Church, who talks about rise up, changes in leadership. And then the whole idea of scaling through anything, Vern Harnish is influence. These are my influences, and you'll have heard things I've talked about before, but I've built on all of these. That's interesting. For years, the standard approach to developing strategy was what's paradoxically called the Harvard Design School model, and it's still, if you've done an MBA or you're doing an MBA, you'll see it in the curriculum, and I taught it for about 12 years or so. It's not actually got that much to do with design in its true meaning, the true meaning of design, because that model is primarily about analysis. There's not much, there's some creativity, but not much. And 3 books really changed the way I think about it. I've mentioned those already. Blue Ocean Strategy, Kim and Morborn, Brown, Change by Design, and Osterwalder and Pigneur, Business Model Generation. Now, elements of the Harvard model are still very much relevant, but they're much part of a richer, broader way of thinking. And the Harvard approach still dominates inputs into how we really determine strategy. Reviewing our position, looking at possibilities, looking at people, identifying conditions for success as well as barriers, and making decisions. What Blue Ocean Strategy, Change by Design, and Business Model Generation did for me was to introduce the principles of creative design into strategy development. And that's why I use the music metaphor. My son is a musician, I'm a lapsed musician, and the reason I use the metaphor is there are skills in building a performance to do with practice, then there's stagecraft, and then there's lighting, production, so on and so forth. All of these different elements in building a production, but it's still the creativity that has to sit at the heart of it all and actually make it work. And creating strategy, the development of strategy, is not a sterile process. As we determine strategy, look at our options and try and understand what the potential is for growth and frameworks for strategy, it's got to be understood as a creative process. And that means it almost becomes a contact sport, for want of a better expression. And what I'm trying to do today, just to give a little training to help people cope with the contact. My point is that leading strategy design means that we need to engage with our stakeholders, because the people in the big office aren't the only ones facing a strategic opportunity or challenge. You've got to gather information, you've got to create breakthrough ideas, building on the information you've just built, and you've got to get past incremental or the obvious solutions, because a lot of people have already thought of that. And that is a common problem in strategy. You see a lot of what I call Me Too strategy, which is that people simply copy other people's ideas. And that usually comes about because the decision-making team is too narrow. You've got to go and ask people. You select a promising strategy, you refine it, execute it, and you tell people about it. And broadly speaking, that falls into 4 main activities, which is the ones I've got on the graphic. It's about evaluating where you are, leading some sort of changing, determining where you want to go, and then planning for that. That's broadly speaking the activities, but that's about it. Why we need some difference is because, as we've seen over the past few days in Australia and elsewhere in the world, things move very quickly. And what you actually need to respond to things moving quickly is a live strategy. And that's what it should be. It should be something that you wrestle with. It should be something that you deeply connects with your customers, and not some ideal plan that's simply, oh yes, we've got our strategy, put it away, like a business plan, put it in the drawer, that's it. I'll look at it once a week. It's got to be something that really engages you and gets you going. So as I just work through this sort of brief ideas, just ask yourselves where you are now, where do you want to be, and what do you need to do to actually get there. When you're looking to develop a strategy, I think now increasingly you don't see this in classic strategy. I think you've got to start with the stakeholder community, and it's what Stephen Covey called beginning with the end in mind. And these are the people who are going to buy from you. So what's the market you want, not is what the market you are given or you're taking. It's got to be what's the market you're targeting. Who are they? What do they do? What are their goals and values? What are their challenges and pain points? And where to get their information from? What's their role in purchasing? What might they object to in buying from you? You need to think about all these things. It's kind of like drawing cartoons or caricatures of your customers, not cruel ones, but ones that sort of illustrate or exaggerate the main points of your customers. What is it that really matters of them? And these ideas, these customer avatars, helps you really to craft your positioning. And the best way to get a grip on who you help is to develop a set of customer avatars. There's a worksheet here which you'll get within the slides. Even if you're selling business to business, you'll be selling to an individual person, and having a customer archetype that describes that person is really useful. And sometimes we don't think in those terms. We think we're selling to a business, and we're not. We're actually selling to a person. It's knowing that means you can perfect your pitch to the business. You need to know who they are and what's their biggest problem or pain point, and what will make them feel better about themselves. That's the important part. You want to see this in action? Take a look at the advertising for Light and Easy. Light and Easy, the diet food sales company. Their customer avatars are live on the screen. Fred Smith, who lost 15 kilos. Joan Jones, who lost 25 kilos. They're there in front of you, and their purpose was losing weight. Do you see who they are? Family people, all sorts of different people. Their pain points was being obese. Their challenge was not being able to lose weight through I don't know, lack of dietary control, whatever. But the point is that getting it this way is very different from the approach point to classical strategy. Talking of which, there are, of course, elements of classical strategy that we still use. The French expression, plus ça change, c'est la même chose. The more it changes, the more it's the same thing. I think I've been using this slide for 27 years. Even from a fresh design perspective on strategy, you still need to understand your business position. And I still haven't found a better way to do this than what I refer to as the venerable SWOT analysis. What are the opportunities and threats you see in the environment that you're in and in your own business, and how you position to deal with them? It's kind of like the 4 seasons, which is the illustration there that you can see. How are you positioned to deal with the changes in the weather as the year unfolds? And the year being your engagement with your customers. Strategic positions are internal strengths and weaknesses. External opportunities and threats are what goes on in your competitive ocean, which I'll come back to in a moment. Politics, economics, society, technology, and the natural environment and competitive forces all feed into this type of analysis. And then you get to creativity. And creativity is a multi-step process. It ain't magic. And don't ever let anyone tell you that creativity can't be taught, or that you are not creative, or that you will never be creative. I do not believe that. I don't accept it for a moment. The short version is, in our world, in the world of business, it's about engaging with customers to get data, to generate ideas and design and implement value propositions that meet market requirements. It's a bit like being a wedding planner. Start with a happy couple in the local church and make them feel like Harry and Meghan in Windsor Chapel, or whatever they want, whatever is the end point. They may want the happy couple in the local church, but it's making them feel as good as they possibly can. But there are a huge, significant number of steps between the requirements and the outcomes. And that means starting off with engaging with a community that has some opportunity or challenge, gathering information on their current reality, creating breakthrough ideas by pushing past the incremental or the obvious. And that's where the community comes in. Incremental may be good as a way of improving your product as you go through, or your service. But if you really want to get change, you've got to build something much more creatively. Selecting a promising idea out of all of the ideas that you will generate. And when you engage in this properly, you do generate a great deal of ideas. Refining that through prototyping, and then executing the delivery of a final service or product. And you need to communicate too, of course, and that is the role of the sort of thing that I'm doing this morning, webinars, advertising, however you do it, communicating with your customers. Because what you want to do is to encourage other people to take action. In selecting any promising strategy, you've got a choice. Do you focus on the conventional way of doing things, normally the corporate way of doing things, which is selecting an existing market, or you do what is increasingly common and what entrepreneurs have done for years, which is focus on value. So not quite build it and they will come, but very nearly. The metaphor's well known, it's out there. It's a red ocean full of competition, or a blue one that's clean, ready for you to work in. So it's where do you set the terms of engagement for your business? In the red ocean strategy, you adopt one of the 3 generic strategies designed by Michael Porter back in the 1980s, I think it was, when he first wrote his books. Do you differentiate, do you go for cost leadership, or do you do a focus strategy which combines the 2? Now, that's fine, and that works in the corporate world, but in the way we're moving at the moment, the speed that we're moving at, a better way for me, and this has been established for a while now, for nearly 20 years, about 17 years actually, is value innovation. And that is, you're driving down your costs, or you're monitoring your costs at the same time you're increasing buyer value. You're getting innovation in the middle, because the value that you get out of your work, your business is better, and the customer is getting more value. And the more you reinforce value, the better it is for you, the better it is for your customers. And then it's on to the bit that is always the slimmest part of any strategy textbook, which is implementation, because most academics have no idea about what it takes to implement strategy, in my experience. My own work, I'm an academic in part of my life, the rest of my life I'm a practitioner. It's how you engage and how you actually go into the workplace and how you put it. And it's the old story, the minute that you engage with the customers, not the enemy, the strategy changes. And this gives you an idea, this just summarizes the idea of how you implement strategy, crafting it, embedding it, executing it, and then sustaining it through a whole series of processes. It's kind of like constructing a building from the ground up based on plans. That's a great metaphor for strategy. You have to start off with having good leaders, good leadership. Leadership excellence is absolutely prime. It has to have some financial value. There's one thing floating around that always annoys me as an educator, and that is people saying, oh, education should be free. Education isn't free. Education is financially extremely expensive to run. So it's got to generate some value somewhere along the chain. You've got to have a good business model. And that's another element that I talk about in another one of these talks. You've got to manage your stakeholders well, and you've got to evolve a good corporate culture. And we've seen some instances around culture recently in the news that don't bode well. I'm thinking of the issues in the legal system in Australia just at the moment. And to do all of that, you've got to engage with your employees and track their performance. And in tracking performance, putting a scorecard up, you've got to be damn sure that give them forecast measures as well as lag measures of where they're going through. The best example of all of this, and they've got their problems, goodness knows, over the years, and they've got bad press, but the way that Uber Eats approach his strategy is absolutely brilliant. I think it's one of the best examples I know. They engage with communities and gather information. This is what they do. This is their strategy is active. Once a quarter, they'll go on what they call walkabout. Well, they used to. They will do it again, but they used to visit an Uber Eats city and take a deep dive into its food culture and try and understand the city and the customers that live in it. They do order shadowing, where they follow partners on deliveries, following from the kitchen to the consumer. They have fireside chats with delivery partners, restaurant workers and consumers to find out more about the experience. See, it's all about the customer. The customer is there all the time. They're building the customer avatars in their heads and on paper. The data that they get through this experiential learning that they do feeds into innovation workshops, which gives them the new ideas. They select the ideas by looking at which they think will work the best, and they test them in the field and they refine them. And then the designs are rapidly executed and communicated. So they're living strategy design. They've got a great view of their strategic position. They know what the possibilities are. They're looking carefully at the people who are involved. They're looking at what conditions are required for success and barriers, and then make decisions on that basis. And they've got a huge range of people involved. Now, it doesn't stop the senior decision makers from making decisions. That will always be the case. But they're getting information. You get this idea as an American economist called Herbert Simon, who came up with it based on a systems thinker whose name has just escaped me just for a moment, called requisite variety. There's requisite variety in problem solving, and that really makes a big difference. I don't think Uber would have got to this point following a conventional strategic plan. I think that the way they've engaged with this is marvelous, because its ongoing strategic transformation is deliberately designed. So, as I say, there are four broadly activities going on, but it's all about engaging with the community, getting information on the current reality, creating ideas, selecting one of those ideas, refining it, and then executing it, as well as communication. And that means evaluation, leadership, determining where you're going, and planning are the four main things. Very briefly, and I don't spend a lot of time on this, if you want to know a little bit more about some of the things that I do, this is one thing of many that I do. I've got a mentoring program called Transforming Leaders. By all means, take a look at that. And I've got another, I think, 6 workshops coming up in the idea of transforming leaders. And the next one is on the management of change. I'm going to put your microphones on in a minute, guys, because it's easier than working through that. Final thought, Steve Jobs. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. Now, if there's ever a description of strategy, that's it. And the problem that we have with strategy, or have had with strategy, is that it's all been about what it looks and feels like. It's got to be how it works. And that is all I wanted us to say. And I will now, Mohammed and Alan, whoops. If you want to say some pearls of wisdom or comment, please feel free.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can. Morning, Alan.
Thank you, Clive. I enjoyed that. It was a lovely overview, and you went through a lot of good stuff that I've sort of seen in the past and sort of put into context. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hamid, are you there? You need to unmute your microphone. You're silent on me.
So it doesn't.
All right, gents, look.
All good, thank you.
All good.
Oh, that's there, I'm there.
Guys, look, I will send through the, I'll send through a copy of the talk. You can always distribute it. The numbers, I'm not saying this because you're here, the numbers are slightly unusual this morning. Normally I get quite a few. Something I think has gone on, I don't know what's going on in the background here. So I'll send through a copy of the webinar for you along with the slides. And I always say, and I genuinely mean it, if you've got questions, just drop me an email. I'm more than happy to engage in an email conversation. It won't turn into a sales conversation because I'm not very good at those. And I appreciate you taking the time to join me this morning, and enjoy, if you want to, going back over the highlights and the repeats. And please, if you want to, join me next week. And that's all really from me. Any more comments from either of you?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Clive. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mohammed. I'll close it down now. Thanks very much.
Cheers.